So for digestive system, I'm going to put some boundaries here and here. For digestive system, things sort of to know. Anatomically, it's relatively simple. So know the primary digestive organs. Those are the ones that comprise the alimentary tract. Okay? So if we go from the mouth, right? So we go from the mouth, right? We go mouth, pharynx. They're all listed, so I'm not going to go, but basically mouth, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, anus. Okay? Those are primary. That's relatively easy, and it's even easier because you've got some secondary endocrine, or not endocrine, secondary digestive organs. So this is the pretty short list. So it's salivary glands, pancreas, liver, gallbladder. So basically, all the organs that release some stuff into an alimentary canal or alimentary tract. Does that make sense? So, usual question, what about the tongue? Since it's a part of the mouth, tongue is generally considered to be a secondary endocrine organ. Now, another kind of piece of general anatomy, okay? So epithelium. So you go oral cavity, pharynx, esophagus, and anus, stratified squamous, because this is where the rubbing happens. Makes sense, right? And then the rest, simple columnar. Okay. And finally, sort of another anatomical piece. The general structure of alimentary canal wall. Full disclosure, this will belong mostly, well, almost exclusively to stomach and intestine. Esophagus is different, and we can't really talk about a wall of, I don't know, a mouth or pharynx because it's much more complex. But there are four main layers. So you've got mucosa, submucosa, muscularis, and serosa. Okay, now, what about, so within each layer here, what do you need to know? Mucosa. So in the mucosa, you've got epithelium, so simple columnar, and lamina propria. So lamina propria is areolar connective tissue. And that's where really important part. Lamina propria contains a lot of immune cells that protect you from any microorganisms that get in from the food. There's also a very thin layer of smooth muscle cell called muscularis mucosae. a little bit of assistance in peristalsis, right? In submucosa, just connective tissue. In this connective tissue, you have some glands, some blood vessels, so on and so forth. Muscularis, generally speaking, 2 layers. So we've got a layer of circular smooth muscle and longitudinal smooth muscle. And serosa is just, some connective tissue with some epithelium covered in simple squamous epithelium. So in the conversations that we're going to hold here, we're going to be mostly focusing on the functions of mucosa and muscularis, because this is the absorption, release of digestive juices, so on and so forth. This is peristalsis. Does that make sense? Any questions here?
You said the 2 bottom ones are
Well,
peristalsis.
Say again?
Which ones are peristalsis?
Peristalsis is muscularis. So that's what's moving food. The serosa is the most boring layer, because it's a connective tissue covered with simple squamous epithelium. There's a production of serous fluid, like structural lubrication, that's it. In some parts of the alimentary canal, there are going to be some alterations. So like in the stomach, there's 3 layers of smooth muscle. In esophagus, there's no serosa, there's adventitia. We'll get to that. Okay, so what about the activities that your digestive system sort of can generate? There are, all classifications are artificial. So kind of having this here, when we talk, so main activity is, one way or another we need to break down food, right? So digestion, okay? Digestion can be chemical and mechanical, right? So chemical digestion is carried out by the secretions that are generated either in the alimentary canal or by secondary secondary digestive organs. So for instance, examples of chemical digestion will be things like, and what is convenient about digestive system? If you need to figure out what's going on there, you just go step by step, organ by organ. So you think, okay, what's going on in the mouth? Any chemical digestion? Yes, salivation. For instance, does that make sense? There's not really a common term for all the digestive juices produced in the stomach or in the intestines, so just chemical, garden variety chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion will be things like, for instance, mastication, and segmentation. Right, so here's the deal. Look, mastication is kind of obvious, right? You chew in the food. What about segmentation? When the food is within the stomach and even more within the intestine, we need to mix it with digestive juices. So intestines will segment the food bolus to make it more homogeneous, more homogeneously mixed with the digestive juices. Now, couple more things. Technically, you have to think about 2 more things. So food, first of all, food has to move down the digestive tract. So we usually call it propulsion. And propulsion would include two major activities. It will be deglutition and peristalsis. Does that make sense? Swallowing and then food is moving farther down. And finally, well, technically we can include the third one. To complete the picture, it's going to be defecation. Okay, that's the ultimate, that's the last one. And on top of that, we have digestion, propulsion, absorption. Okay, so if you want to, using the word that you used recently, holistic approach to digestive system, if you think about it as a whole, like, not separate processes, but the whole thing, how it works, it has to do three things. It has to break down food by mechanical and chemical digestion, okay? And salivation is not the only example, just one example. Break down food. It has to absorb the nutrients from the food as it moves down the alimentary canal. So the approach that we take in studying is always a reductionist approach. We try to, sort of deconstruct the whole process into smaller parts. We have to always remember that, we're not looking at the big picture. We can't really properly comprehend it. Any questions here? Okay.